everyone, and welcome back to Grade 5 Welcome Module Lesson 3. I'm Miss Killian, and I'm one of your virtual teachers. Let's get started. Pause and take a moment and think, do you know our expectations for our learning together today? Remember to be ready to think, share your ideas, and stay focused. As you know, this module has 5 lessons, and we're exploring the question, how will we learn together virtually? Today, we'll keep exploring that question. We're going to practice and learn more about our content stages. We're also going to keep looking at a text, and we're going to explore how to work together virtually. Let's review. The last time we learned together, we talked about the content stages and the craft stages. Do you remember how last time we said how reading helps us to learn to write and writing helps us to learn to read? This is why in every lesson we will move through a content stage for reading as well as a craft stage for writing. In part 1 of today's lesson, we're going to look more deeply at that work of art that we started looking at in lesson 1 and 2, and we're going to see what is revealed. In part 2 of our lesson, we are going to experiment. This is our writing skill for the day of combining sentences. Do you have a journal and a pen or pencil with you? If not, pause the recording now so that you can get ready. Stopping to think and write about what you are learning helps you learn and to remember what you learned. We'll do this in different ways as we work together. In lesson 1, you made a T-chart. In lesson 2, you stopped and jotted. Today, we're going to answer text-dependent questions. Those are what we call, at Wit and Wisdom, TDQs. Have you heard of that before? These are questions that depend on the text for their answers. You will read like detectives to answer these questions. As you know, we have 5 content stages, and each content stage has a content framing question to guide the learning. Today, we're in the 3rd content stage, which is reveal. The content framing question that we will be focusing on is, what does a deeper exploration of line reveal in this photograph? In reveal, we zoom into 1 or 2 aspects of a text, and we analyze the impact of that aspect on our understanding. In this lesson, we'll look at the impact of an artist's choice of line and position, and we'll see how the viewer interprets that photograph. Because we are learning virtually, after each TDQ, text-dependent question, I'll ask you to pause the video and write your response, including your evidence. Today, I'll also share some responses from other students so that you have some ideas that can add to your own understanding. Either with your pen or paper, in your journal, or in your electronic workspace, I want you to make a header that says TDQs about photograph. You might want to pause the video now so you can get your TDQs page all ready. Let's return to the photograph. This photograph is the one we looked at in lesson 1 and lesson 2. It shows President Lincoln, who made a trip to Antietam Battlefield during the Civil War in the 1860s. He is shown with General John A. McClernand, as well as Alan Pinkerton, who was the Chief of the Secret Service of the United States. During the last organized lesson, we looked at what was happening in terms of the setting, the people, the objects in the photograph. We also talked about and looked at what was happening artistically. The colors that the artist chose to use, the lines, the position of objects in the foreground or background. At the reveal stage, we're going to revisit the idea of line, but in a deeper way. Just like you might look at how an author uses a figure of speech to describe a character in a text, and it will impact your understanding of a book, An artist may use line to impact your understanding of a photograph. Here's the question I want you to think about. How does the artist use line to attract the eye in the photograph? Everyone, turn away. Turn back. When you look at the photograph with fresh eyes, where do your eyes go first? Think about that. Now, I'm going to ask you a series of TDQs. You do not need to write these down. Just answer them silently to yourself. How would you describe the lines in the area of the photograph where your eyes went first? How does Thomas Franklin, the photographer, use line to attract you to look at certain parts of the photograph first? Where do the lines in the photograph lead your eyes next? And where do you look after that? To connect how Franklin uses line with how the photograph needs to be analyzed, we're going to answer some questions just like a detective, and we're going to find evidence from the photograph to support those answers. Be sure when you think, write, and discuss your answers in this lesson that you point out that evidence directly from the text that's helping you make your conclusion. All right, now write this TDQ. How does the artist use line to attract the eye in this photograph? Then write your answer to the TDQ. You're going to write everything you notice about line and how it connects to where you look and what you see in the photograph. Pause the video now so that you can write the answer to that question. Go. If you are doing these lessons with a family member or friend, stop and share what you've written. Check whether you agree with the conclusions that the other person has come to. See what evidence was used to support the conclusions. Is the evidence directly from the photograph? Pause the video and share your TDQ responses now. I'm going to share some responses from other students to this question. Again, I'm sharing these to expand the conversation so that you have more ideas to consider. Here are some responses from other students. President Lincoln is the tallest figure at the center. The line of the tent pole and the tree continue up from his hat, adding to his height. Do you see that? Is that supported by text evidence? The tent flaps and ropes lead to the center of the image above his head. Let's see. Can we see that? Is that supported with evidence? All of the lines seem to point toward Lincoln in the center, showing us that he is the most important figure. So that's a conclusion that was made. He's the most important figure. I do see all of those lines pointing towards the center. That's a conclusion supported with text evidence. What was your analysis? Was it based on evidence? Now we're going to dig deeper and we're going to think about why a photograph matters. Photographers make careful choices about their photographs and specifically how they pose the figures. That means how a figure is sitting or standing in a work of art. How has the photographer posed the figures in this photograph? Before you answer this question, you may want to keep in mind that there's no right answer and that we all think about this differently, but be sure to ground it in evidence. So, how has the photographer posed the figures in this photograph? Record the TDQ and respond to it on your TDQ page now. Pause the video so you can write your question and the answer. If you're doing these lessons with a family member or a friend, stop and share what you've written. Check whether you agree with the conclusions that he or she came up with. Are they based on evidence from the photograph? Give some feedback. Pause the video to share those TDQ responses now. Remember how I said people have analyzed this photograph in different ways? Here are some of the analyses from other students. President Lincoln is in the center. Two other men are turned towards him. They have their hands over their hearts as though they're saying the Pledge of Allegiance and seem to be directing their attention towards the president. Maybe they're pledging their loyalty? The president is the most important person in the photograph. Is that supported by text evidence? If so, give a thumbs up. While the general looks towards his commander-in-chief, Pickerington looks towards the photographer or the viewer, as though keeping watch over us to keep the president safe. Is that conclusion supported with text evidence? I wonder what you thought. I hope you'll keep considering or thinking about the last question even after this video ends. If you want, you can look at this photograph or show it to someone in your family. You can find it here. Pause the screen and write down this web address if you want to show someone this photograph. Today, we practice the third content stage. Everyone, what's the name of that content stage? Reveal. In our next content stage lesson, we're going to go into distill, and we're going to zoom back out, and we're going to consider the big picture of this photograph. Be sure to keep your responses from today with your other materials organized. They are going to be very helpful in the distill stage. In the next part of the lesson, part 2, we're going to think more about our writing skill of combining sentences. Get ready for that, and I'll see you soon.